baptistry, a symbol of Florence, a place that for many meant the beginning, but that for one remarkable character, Baldassarre Cossa, aka John the 23rd, meant the end. What a remarkable end it was. This church, believed for centuries to be built above a temple of the Roman god of war Mars, is where most Florentines were baptized for nearly 1,000 years. From the 1100s all the way through to the 1970s. Its sacrality and geometric harmony not to be disrupted by any monument of a personal nature. This temple belongs to everyone, but it belongs to some more than it does to the rest. Let's just say that where there's a will and a lot of money, there's always a way, and the Medici family certainly had no shortage of both. In fact, when their friend and business associate, Baldassarre Cossa, passed away in 1419, they had no qualms whatsoever about breaking a sacred rule no Florentine had ever even thought to break: the erection of a monumental tomb in the city's holiest building, the baptistry. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves...
Hold up. Man, what you gonna do now? What we're gonna do right here is go back.
How far you going back?
Way back.
As we go a little something like this. Hit it!
Let's start off with what's written on the tomb. Johannes quondam Papa vicesimus tertius. Which basically means what? John the 23rd, who once was Pope. Now what does it mean to once be Pope? John the 23rd, the ex-Pope. John the 23rd, who for some time was Pope. John the 23rd was one of the few popes in the history of the papacy to be depoped. But let's go even further back.
Way back.
The whole story begins in the early 1300s, when essentially the papacy moves to Avignon in the south of France because Rome was a little bit too turbulent at the time. And for 70 years, the headquarters of the papacy of the church is in Avignon. 1378, they decide to come back to Rome. Little problem, half the curia is now French and they don't like Rome. So they decide to go back to France and elect another pope. So we end up with two popes, a Roman pope and a French pope. It's ridiculous. Who's the pope? Who's the real pope? Who do we turn to? So some states go for one pope, others go for the other. It's very confusing. And the situation remains unchanged for about 30 years. Until 1409, when a group of cardinals from Avignon, a group of cardinals from Rome, get together in Pisa. The whole point of the council, to depope the French and Roman pope and elect a new pope. Which is kind of what happens. They elect a new pope, Alexander V, they depope the others, but the others don't back down. So we end up with 3 popes.
3 shall be the number that...
One in Rome, one in Pisa, and one in Avignon. Now the Pisa Pope, Alexander V, he only lasts for about a year. He dies, apparently poisoned.
Murder! Murder! Most foul as...
Some say by the next Pisa Pope, Baldassarre Cossa, aka John the 23rd. Now, the situation remains virtually the same for another few years. Until in 1415, it's become ridiculous. It's become a scandal. We can't have 3 different popes. So in Constance, with the support of the Holy Roman Emperor, they hold yet another council. This time we're going to depope everyone.
You're fired.
And elect yet another pope. And the council was relatively successful in the sense that they depope everyone, but Baldassarre Cossa ain't having it. He's like, no, wait a minute. I'm the Pisa Pope. I'm the one that was basically, elected to fix the whole thing. I'm not going anywhere. So what happens? To get rid of Baldassarre Cossa, they throw the book at him. They charge him with sodomy, with Satanism, piracy, witchcraft, murder, whatever. He gets locked up, spends a couple of years cooped up in a castle, and then his buddies, the Medici, pay for his bail. They bail him out, 30,000 florins. I don't even want to think about how much money that is. It's like $1 billion stacked up. So he comes back to Florence, essentially retires. The Medici not only welcome him with open arms, but they are able to organize a meeting between him and Martin V, the new pope. So our modern popes, they essentially stem from Martin V, the pope elected in Constance. So Baldassarre kisses and makes up with Martin V.
I'm really sorry. I'm afraid sorry doesn't cut it with this pope.
He gets his cardinal title back, everything's peachy, and then he dies. And when he dies, what happens? He had put in his will a particular, I guess, demand, we could say, that he wanted to be buried in the baptistry. Only thing is, you can't get buried in the baptistry. There was legal impediments to this happening.
Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
But, of course, when you're friends with the Medici, everything's possible. So why are the Medici so nice to this guy? You know, what did he do for them? Well, it's kind of a long story, but apparently Baldassarre Cossa first became cardinal with Medici money, with the money of Giovanni di Bicci. And then when he becomes Pope in Pisa, what does he do? For the Medici, he makes them the papal bankers. See, the main, most lucrative thing you can gain from being papal banker is the collection of the decima, the papal tax, which is basically 1/10 of your income. As a Christian, you have to do this. You have to pay 1/10 of your income to the Pope, and if you don't, it's excommunication.
Excommunicate and anathema.
Now, of course, the Pope and the Church in general can't go around collecting cash. It's not a financial institution, so they subcontract this service to a bank, like the Medici Bank. And on every transaction, you pick up a commission. It's like Western Union, Thomas Cook, you name it. And that's basically how the Medici go from being relatively wealthy to ridiculously wealthy. So when this guy falls on hard times, they kind of owe him one. And with the pretext of respecting their friend's last will, what do they also do? They place a tomb in the most sacred, holiest church in town, okay, which is of course also a political statement. You know, the Medici is saying to the people of Florence, look at how rich and powerful we are. We can even bury our bodies in the baptistry. Okay, something that would have been inconceivable to anyone else. And of course, there was a bit of a loophole. The Merchants Guild, which essentially had the patronage over the baptistry, agrees to let Baldassarre Cossa have his tomb in the baptistry on one condition, that it doesn't occupy too much space from the ground. And then it's like, cool, we'll build upwards. And in fact, they don't cover any space on the ground, but they cover a whole damn wall. So the kind of medieval Romanesque minimalism of the baptistry, this simple essential quality, is completely interrupted by this huge monumental Renaissance tomb. And who does the tomb? Okay, who do we hire to do the tomb? Donatello, the hottest artist around. So the whole thing is just this web of art, corruption, politics, religion, all intertwined in this one very murky pot. And at the same time, from an artistic point of view, it's one of the first, if not the very first example of a tomb in the new Renaissance style. Last little thing. Those of you who know anything about popes, if you did happen to already hear the name John the 23rd in a different context, it's not confusing or anything, it's just that in the 1950s there was another John the 23rd. Why? Because when you get depoped, the domain name becomes available again. So we have a John the 23rd in the Renaissance and a John the 23rd in the 1950s. Word.